Coogs House. All this talk about round ball in Houston, but did the Cougars get better at football last weekend?
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. And if you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, the Powerball just hit $1 billion. So tell us, if you win the lottery, what's the first thing that you buy? Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But today's episode is going to be looking at all things surrounding the most recent big-time weekend in Houston Cougar recruiting. We're going to look at names of guys that came through, and at the end of each kind of grouping of guys, I have some thoughts on what the grouping says about this new coaching staff that Willie Fritz has brought into Houston, kind of what that means to look out for as things move forward. Now, I want to talk some about the big guys, because I know everyone loves to talk about bringing new big guys, bringing a refreshed set of big guys, just bringing more big guys into Houston. So that's obviously got to have its own segment, talk about what those guys look like. We have a segment talking about playmakers, and guys who hear about catching touchdowns and making interceptions and those kinds of things as well. But first and foremost, we got to talk about who's going to be taking the snaps. Houston had a lot of different guys on campus on Saturday, the day after. Many of us, myself included, were still upset about Houston losing to Duke the night before in basketball. A lot of guys had to watch Saturday practice. Blake Andakoviak did a lot of research on this. I talked with him some, talked to a couple of other people that were there. Some of Blake's been on the show before, so I know you know that name. Blake did a great breakdown, but I had some thoughts after reading and talking to people about who all was there. And in looking at the arm talent, there were three quarterbacks that stick out as far as like names you got to know. Keyshawn Henderson was one of the bigger surprises. He's a 2026 athlete. He's actually being recruited as a wide receiver to a lot of Power 5 schools, like top tier Power 5 schools. He's considered a top 10 wide receiver in the state of Texas at 6'3", 185 pound, out of the Legacy School of Sports and Sciences from Spring, Texas. However, I think it's interesting that he's considered a top-tier receiver, and it's considering Houston because Houston's looking at him as a quarterback, and he does want to throw the football, it sounds like, right? Blake was adamant about having talked to some people around him and that kind of stuff, that's a big thing that he wants to do. He runs a 4.5. He's also coached by Michael Bishop, a 1998 Heisman runner-up out at LSSS. And I think it's interesting to see, like, he doesn't want to get pigeonholed into this receiver thing. 2026, and that's going to be really important in a second, because they also had on campus Keelan Russell, 6'3", 175-pound kid out of Duncanville. He might have been the bigger surprise to a lot of audiences. He's currently a verbal commit to SMU, Duncanville, SMU, obviously all in the DFW Metroplex. He has Florida offer, Ole Miss offer, Baylor, TCU, Texas A&M, could go a lot of places. A 4-star kid. Some people have him as high as the 7th quarterback in the nation in the 2025 class. He's a passing quarterback that's also a 4x4 track star, right? Like, he's that kind of an athlete. But turned some heads when he showed up to Houston over the weekend. And what does that mean for the program? And then obviously Adam Scoble, 6'5"-ish, 200 pounds-ish from Columbus, Texas. Yes, Scoble's committed to Baylor. I think Baylor is kind of quivering in their boots a little bit about his commitment, though, because Sean Bell, the lead recruiter in getting him to commit to Baylor, is now the Houston quarterbacks coach and the new staff we've built here. So obviously they've got a great relationship. Houston's in the Big 12. Houston beat Baylor in the Big 12 last year. And you can look at a bunch of different reasons that, okay, is the move to Houston actually the better move for Scoble? And for what it's worth, I also think it's pointing out that this kid's got a huge arm. I mean, a big, deep threat kind of thrower with the kind of speed Houston has at receiver could be really, really important down the line. You look at the Baylor staff, and they're probably surprised that they're intact. I mean, Aranda that was on the hot seat in a lot of national searches, national outlets uh, at the end of last season. He's going to get to stay on. If Aranda and the staff there is who he thinks he's going to go play for, and then that whole staff blows up next November, having Sean Bell in Houston, the guy who got him to commit to Baylor, is probably an important factor in if we can get the 2025 quarterback to come to Houston. All three guys are being heavily pursued, but I think it's interesting that Keyshawn Henderson, probably the highest ranked national prospect out of the bunch, is considered a receiver, and that he's the youngest of the bunch because theoretically, as you're looking at 2025's signing next year, you could bring in either Russell or Scoble to come in the 2025 class and then be freshmen the next year and still go get Keyshawn Henderson, have him play a little bit of a dual role, being a little bit of a wide receiver option threat, a package with him playing quarterback, and then also have him working on more traditional quarterback stuff in practice and things like that. And if you need him in a pinch, you need him in a pinch to develop him into a true dual threat quarterback. He's got the wheels to do the one threat, and at the high school level, he can obviously do all of it, right? It's about projecting that to Big 12 Power 5 football. I think people think it's got to be one of these three guys that commit. Can you pull Russell or Scoble out of their commitments to Baylor and SMU? Can you pull Henderson and say, pitch the quarterback thing or whatever? Do you ride with young Chris or something that's on the roster? I think, though, it's interesting that, with the exception of Scoble, who's got a crazy strong arm, you're seeing a lot of fast quarterbacks being recruited, right? Speed is a factor in all these guys, whether it's Henderson, who's, again, technically also being recruited as a receiver by a lot of schools, or Russell, who's just a track star, right? You're seeing a lot of balance there. Chris commits in the transfer portal. Chris is on campus doing spring workouts right now, right? Out of the transfer portal. Speed's important to what we're doing at quarterback, apparently. But also, this 2025, 2026, the guys can obviously want a quarterback in every class you could have, right? But there's no reason for Keyshawn Henderson to see a big-time 2025 quarterback commit and not still come, because if he truly likes the staff and the system, et cetera, and wants to play quarterback, he could grow into that, develop into that at the high-end college level while playing some receiver, getting on the field, getting it right, doing a bunch of other things that contribute to Houston being a winning program while he's there, all being heavily pursued. Each of them, I think, brings different skill sets and talents to the table. And frankly, I think it's interesting in the season. We'll see next year what the offense looks like. Looks like Donovan Smith is the starter for this fall. He's not doing everything. He's not doing very many things in spring practice because of his shoulder surgery. John Chris is getting a lot of reps. Uela is getting a lot of the reps. I have to think that we'll see some sneak peeks as to what the offense looks like next fall. But as the staff recruits their first signal caller to kind of mold the offense around, interesting to see that they see these speed guys. Donovan can run, and so they can probably do a lot of the same things with him under center next year as well. But it's interesting to see kind of guys that they're looking at that spot, a very important spot at that, and something to keep an eye on as Houston moves forward. Now, obviously, quarterback is super important, right? You cannot overstate how important it is to build your roster around these skills and talents of that kid. Can cover up a lot of things if that kid's really talented also, right? But Houston's trying to put together a full strength team. And I'll talk about the playmakers in a second. But I also want to talk about how if you're putting together a full, strong team and you're hiring for your small business, you've got to find quality professionals that are right for your role. And that's got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn has the tools you need to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion, with a B, professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It even gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. I said I want to talk some about playmakers here, and I want to kind of go through a list of some of the big names that were at Houston over the weekend, and then talk in broad strokes about what these guys as big names means, right? Um, Houston did a very good job of getting these guys out to campus, showing them a good day of practice. All indications were it was a successful weekend in terms of recruiting. But Houston got a lot of different guys out there, like Byers is a running back out of Lake Creek High School in Montgomery. 2025, he's 5'9", 200. Houston's his lone Power 5 offer. Again, at 5'9", 200. He's 2025 kid. You might see more of those build up, but it's interesting to see that for sure. Another running back that they've got that was here over the weekend, or sorry, another 2025 skill position guy they got from the weekend is Gil Jackson. Jacaden Ferguson is a wide receiver from Fort Bend Marshall. He's 6'1", 160. He does have a handful of Power 5 offers: Arkansas, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Oregon. He goes 4.49 in the 40, right? Other guys, you got Jaquise Martin from Rudder High School in Bryan, 5'10", 175. He's got Power 5 offer from Tech, Nebraska. He clocked in at 10.8 in the 100 recently. Tristan Norman, wide receiver from Montgomery, Alabama, Carver High School. I don't know much about Alabama high schools, but Carver High School out there, 6 foot, $165, but clocked in at a 4.47 recently. Right, he's got Auburn, Arkansas offers under his belt. On the defensive side of these skill position guys, right? That's got Gil Jackson, corner out of Ridge Point High School, 6'2", $175. He's also in the 4.4 range. He's got Texas Tech as a Power 5 offer. Right. You got Donovan Jones, a linebacker at Waco Midway, 6'2", 200, more of a coverage type receiver. He's got Baylor, Oklahoma State, and TCU. And then linebacker out of the DFW area, North Crowley. I think that's in Fort Worth. I think that's in Fort Worth. 6'2", $195. Again, more of a coverage outside linebacker type. He's got TCU, Texas, Arizona State, Arkansas on his offer sheet. What you see here is a lot of guys that, honestly, with the exception of Byers being 5'9", 200, and he is 5'9", a lot of guys that you frankly be like, man, Parker, that guy needs to add 10 pounds. Go eat a cheeseburger, dude. Right? Like they have a bunch of guys I think need to put on a little bit of weight when you look at just their raw statistics, like the raw measurements, right? You'd say all of these guys, like Jacaden Ferguson at 6'1", 160, like, dude, you're going to get crunched, right? Like you're going to see that around a lot of these guys. But what you're also going to see is each of these guys has definitionally like high-end speed, even for Power 5 football, right? And what's fascinating to see is what does that mean for the vision that Fritz and company have for this program, right? When they're looking at skill guys, are they going a 5'9" running back, right? But he can boogie, right? 160-pound wide receiver, but he can fly, right? Yeah, this linebacker's, 200 pounds, 215 pounds, but they ran sprints in high school. Like are those kinds of guys more the model, the mode, the direction this program is headed, right? Now, I think that's a good thing when you see the way modern football is going, for a variety of safety reasons. The way they're doing things like taking away the drop hip tackling, or making sure you don't lead at the target at the top of the head, or down by the knees in certain areas of the field. You're going to have a strike zone. Speed, I guess what I'm getting at, regardless of playmaking position here, is so important to modern football, because a lot of, and I'm not saying football is not a violent game. It is a very violent game, but football's violence has been tapered down some in the last 15 to 20 years, right? And as you're seeing that be the trend, right? More targeting penalties, a lot more focus on getting by guys. You can't get your hands on guys at the line of scrimmage, and all those different kinds of things with skill position guys, especially. Having speed, especially when the physical side is not as great, it's hard to argue with, right? It's really, really important for the way the football is going. Yes, obviously, you also trust that Herter and the guys that you've got on staff to build up the strength conditioning program. Can also help gain good weight for the guys that are a little undersized. Again, like 160 is very thin, even for a wide receiver. You hope to get up to like 175 by the time he's playing a lot of snaps, whatever. But I digress. Across the board, they're saying the way football is projecting, the way the game is going, and they're saying we're just going to be faster than everyone else. Now, I think that's interesting, especially when you look at the kinds of, honestly, offenses that both Barbe and Fritz, although Fritz is more of a defensive mind guy, have been a part of at the various stops. They're not the kinds of teams that are just going to run ISO down teams' throats and just overpower people, right? They do run the ball effectively and run the ball a lot, frankly, but they also do it with speed. Speed is vital for what these guys want to do. I think I've said vital like 4 times. I got to pay a fine or something there. Anyway, what you see here is speed being really, really important to what the future of the Houston Cougar program is, and frankly, what you might see on the field this fall. Faster guys, Boogie Johnson, Sam Brown, Parker Jenkins, these guys that have speed might get more reps than they'd gotten in previous administrations. Are we going to call it that? Because the way this offense goes, they're going to value speed over size, right? Boogie has great speed and great footwork, but last year he got stuck playing behind some guys that are efficient and, bigger, a little bit stronger, been around for a minute longer. I'd imagine you see a lot more of Boogie Johnson this fall based on where it feels like the program is headed. It could be a match made in heaven in a lot of ways, right? It also makes me feel more comfortable with saying that, Houston's going to go to 2 running backs, but Parker Jenkins is going to play a lot more, right? The way he gets from first gear to fourth gear before he hits the line of scrimmage is so impressive that it's hard to imagine a program that values the speed here like they've got with these skill guys. Again, got guys going 4.4 in high school, got guys going for 10.8 in the 100, right? It's hard to imagine a program that's going after that much speed with that much intention, not also playing the faster guys on their roster this fall. Now, I say all that to say that these are the kinds of trends, while it's spring football recruiting, right? These are the kinds of trends that I look at and pay attention to with the skinny guys, right? What kind of skinny guy are we looking at? What kind of skinny guy is going to be pulled into Houston? What kind of skinny guy is, frankly, going to get the nod, going to get the looks, going to get handshakes, bring them onto campus, show them a good time, like they did with a lot of guys last weekend. I think it's an important exercise to also do that with the big fellas because there are some fairly revealing things when you look at what Houston's doing with their big guys, the linemen, the guys in the trenches, etc. I want to talk about that some in the third segment. But first, we're talking about pretty well-oiled machines here. We're talking about high-end athletes. And just like these guys are well-oiled machines, passion-driven patience are the winning formula for championships. And it's also what keeps your best machines alive. eBay Motors has got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you need and the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that huge win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Now, Houston, I think, rightfully, graduated a lot of big guys off the roster last year, right? We're seeing Jack Freeman out at pro days with the Dallas Cowboys staff. Patrick Paul's being projected. He's actually moving up draft boards if you're paying attention. And he's being projected to be maybe even a first or second round pick. I mean, he's a tackle. He's big, strong, athletic. And also, for what it's worth, you're looking at like a lot of youth coming in. If you're watching those guys go out, a lot of youth coming in. And it leaves people wondering what the future of Houston's linemen are. Linemen, I think we all saw when Houston went into the Big 12 last season, were kind of the biggest learning curve for the Houston Cougars. Last weekend, on top of a bunch of skill guys and a handful of quarterbacks, Houston also brought on some key line talent. A handful of 2025s, but the interesting to me was 2026, Avery Morshow. He's a tackle from Ridgepoint High School, 6'4", 270 as of 2026. So he's got room to grow still. Currently has 3 other Power 5 offers, 6'4", 270, and frankly, fairly athletically built kid. You had also from from Dickinson nearby, tight end Mason Peterson, who's verbally committed to TCU, but he's 6'4", 220. He also has Baylor, Arizona State, and Colorado's offers. I don't know. He's not signed anywhere yet. Obviously, just a verbal commitment to TCU, and frankly, that staff has just like turned some stuff over as well, right? That obviously Sonny's still in charge there, I guess, but some of the positional guys are changing out. Nearby, you also have Smith Orugbo from A-Leaf Hastings High School. For what it's worth, he was also apparently at the Houston-Kansas basketball game. We mentioned that being a big recruiting tool for Houston. He's 6'4", 220, exactly like Mason Peterson, but a little bit different looking, 6'4", 220, a little bit stockier looking for. I don't know if that's length of arms or what the deal is there. He's got SMU, Arizona State, Arkansas, and Baylor all on his offer sheet. I really like the build of DK Mays is a Baton Rouge kid, Central High School in Baton Rouge, 6'4", 250. His Power 5 offers are Georgia Tech and Texas A&M. He's also 2025. Dylan Singleton is the heaviest of the bunch. He is a 2025 defensive lineman at 6'4", 280. And then Patrick McMath, 6'4", 255. Houston's his only Power 5 offer. He is from nearby Katy. I feel like the hometown thing there is going to be really important. Across the board here, though, one thing that I don't know if listeners want to hear or not is they're taking leaner athletes, more athletically built athletes. They're not taking guys that are 315 and their belly sticks way out over their belt, right? That's not the kind of thing that they want to do offensively and defensively, whether it's 2026 Avery Morshow or 2025 DK Mays. They're looking at guys that frankly walk in the gym and everyone goes, whoa, like that guy just looks like a big, strong athlete. Not quite bodybuilder, chiseled out. They need athletic guys, but more lean type of linemen. Defensively, I think we've seen this in the past. I mean, Nelson Caesar's a crazy athlete, right? Logan Hall, great athletes across the board coming out of Sac Avenue. Offensively, I would argue, while no one is 6'7" like Patrick was, this is actually kind of that mold, though. If you were to like take the picture and just like proportionally shrink it down of what Patrick Paul is, if at 6'7", freshman Patrick Paul would have been proportionally the same build as a guy that's like 6'4", 220, right? The idea to then gain size and strength as you spend time in college is important, but it also means that once you get big enough, you got the bendiness, you got the athleticism, right? You've played an athletic brand of football, and you put on weight the right way, hopefully in your college program, right? And then you start thinking about, like, well, what kinds of offenses and defenses does that mean you're going to do? The defensive kind of stuff I can imagine Fritz doing with these types of athletes and this type of focus is a lot of, honestly, movement kind of stuff. A lot of stuff that, frankly, when Tulane beat Houston a couple years ago, you saw the defense line with great penetration because they were never sitting still, made it really hard to get a read on as your offensive line's pass blocking and stuff like that. Really hard to get a down block on the run game when those guys are not sitting still. You got to have the right kind of athletes to do that. It appears that Houston's going after those types of athletes this time around as well with the new staff. Offensively, right? We talk about the counter scheme that we think they're going to run a lot of off tackle kind of stuff that you hope hit the tackle, hit the edge, and bounces. That requires pulling linemen, athletic linemen, guys that move, not guys that just move in a straight line forward at a slow pace. I mean, you got to get out in space, pull around, find a linebacker, block them in space or cut them down. That takes a very special athlete. I think they've got some of those guys in this group that was here over the weekend. I think they're going to continue to find those kinds of leaner, athletic type guys to ultimately fit their program. Now, I will say that like all indications from spring practice are like Pancake Hunter looks like the real stinking deal. He's put on a lot of good weight in his time playing behind Jack Freeman. And I think it's his turn, and I think he's ready to go make it shine, right? I think that's a name that, as far as like the way we heard about Patrick Paul the last couple of years, you hear about Pancake Hunter, Demetrius Hunter Jr., I should say. You hear about him a lot over the next couple of years as well, in the same vein. A guy that like is playing the Houston system, potential draft pick, et cetera, et cetera. Spring practice sounds like it's going very well for him. I I look at like frankly the weight he's gained since he's been at Houston. It kind of fits into this more lean thing. His chest and stomach, when you look at like an offensive lineman, kind of stick out just as far as one another, and it's not super far off his belt, as I heard a coach once say. Right? Um, he's an athlete. These are athletes, and I think that tells you a lot about the offense and defense Houston will be running. Now, there's a lot more recruiting to be done this spring. There'll be transfer portal news as soon as those things open back up. Basketball transfer portal is running. Basketball guys committing to the NBA draft, I should say, is starting very soon. All kinds of question marks around the future of these programs at the University of Houston. Got to check in on baseball every now and then as well. Softball had, I guess baseball also has slumping a little bit the last couple of weeks, but you can see talk about a little bit of both bat and ball sport programs. Track is always strong. Hard to complain about those kinds of things, right? We got to talk about all things Houston Cougars each and every day here. So if you've got something you want to hear about, we're going to keep it going. Got some more basketball and football topics to talk about this week. We got things that you want to hear that specific or off that you can tell us in the comments down below. Don't forget to tell us what you're going to spend that money on when you win the lottery. And as always, Locked On Coogs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team are Houston Cougars each and every day. Go Coogs.